Welcome on into our Falcons Bucs Week 14 preview. A big game for Atlanta, sitting at 6-6, trying to get back above 500 for the first time in quite some time. So we're going to break down keys to victory, get you guys familiar with both these teams, what the Bucs have been up to since Atlanta last played them, and then we'll talk about the injury news and the implications as a result. But I think it's a good idea to at least go back in time a little bit and look at the Week 6 box score for just a moment when Atlanta took down the Bucs 16-3 despite 3 red zone turnovers by Desmond Ridder and this offense. The defense was clutch. The defense came up with a huge stop at the end of the game, and Younghoe Koo, as always, came in the clutch. Now let's look at the Falcons offense against the Bucs defense. So far this season, Atlanta's offense averaging just under 19 points per game. Very impressively, though, they are converting on 40% of third down conversions. They are also averaging 328 total yards. So they don't have an issue getting down the field. They don't have an issue with extending drives. They're average-ish in the red zone, scoring over 50% of the time. And they're not turning it over a crazy amount, which I guess 18 is not a small number, but they're just not punching in drives because of the turnovers in the red zone. So they don't have an issue with third downs or moving the ball down the field, and they go up against a Bucs defense that does have a good red zone defense, only allowing teams to score 40% of the time. But their 42% third down conversion percentage is one of the higher ups in the league. Now, as for Tampa Bay's offense against Atlanta's defense, the Bucs are averaging just under 20 points a game, which is exactly what Atlanta has allowed so far this year. Their offense, though, not as explosive as Atlanta's, just over 305 yards a game. Third down percentage conversion, 40%. Red zone, just under 50%. But despite having I wouldn't say turnover-prone quarterback in Baker, but maybe not one of the smartest QBs when it comes to protecting the football in Baker Mayfield, they have only coughed up the ball 13 times this year. Now let's look at what both these teams have been up to the last 4 weeks or so. Both teams coming in 2-2 in their last 4 games, but Atlanta has won their last 2 games, whereas the Bucs just barely escaped the worst team in football, the Carolina Panthers, with a 3-point victory, and they lost to the Colts and the 49ers before beating the Titans the week before that. Now, as for the NFC Playoff Picture, Atlanta at 6-6 is kind of stuck at that number 4 spot. Even if they went on an incredible run, they don't have the tiebreaker over the Lions, so they would need a lot of help to move up from that 4 spot to that 3 spot. As for the Buccaneers sitting at 5-7, there is a world where 2 NFC South teams make the playoffs, right? It's not like the Vikings and the Packers and the Rams and the Seahawks all at 6-6 are way too powerful to overcome. So even if the Bucs are not able to catch up to the Falcons in the NFC South, they could play for a wild card spot. Now, before we get into my keys to victory, let me know who you got in this game, Atlanta or Tampa Bay. Falcons took down the Bucs in Week 6 down in Tampa. Let me know who you think wins this game up in ATL. Now let's jump into my keys to victory for the Falcons, starting with this. Don't let Mike Evans and Chris Godwin kill you. Mike Evans is going to go off. He always goes off. He's got 10 straight seasons of over 1,000 yards. The key to victory here is not stop Mike Evans. That's not going to happen. But just don't let Mike Evans and Chris Godwin combine for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards. Evans this year, like I said, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns through 12 games this season. Godwin, on the other hand, has been battling injuries. He only has 606 yards and 1 touchdown. But Atlanta is nicked up in the secondary. A.J. Terrell is in concussion protocol. Jeff Okudah is battling an injury. So if you lose just one of those 2 guys, it's not good to go up against the Buccaneers. If you are down both of those players, we're going to see a lot more of the rookie Clark Phillips. We might see some Hughes and Flowers, but this is not a good week to be shorthanded in the secondary going up against Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Now, when we look at Atlanta's 6 losses this year, I just want to highlight what the opposition has done in those games in terms of their best receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown in Week 3 for the Lions went up for 9 grabs and 102 yards. Christian Kirk for the Jags, RIP to his future kids, or I guess lack thereof, 8 receptions for 84 yards. Week 6, Terry McLaurin, 6 grabs, 81 yards. Hopkins for the Titans, Week 8, 4 grabs, 128 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then a tight end killed him in Week 9, Hawkinson, 7 grabs for 69 yards. And Week 10, speaking of tight ends, Trey McBride for the Cardinals, 8 receptions for 131 yards. So in Atlanta's 6 losses, they have been vulnerable through the air. Hopefully that trend does not continue in Week 14 against the Bucs. Now, before we get on to the rest of my keys to victory for Atlanta, let me tell you guys about our awesome sponsor for today, and that is Prize Picks. Let's just cut to the chase here. Thursday night football between the Steelers and the Patriots is not going to be a matchup for the ages. But if you want to stay locked in on the games, well, check out Prize Picks. All you do is pick more or less on player stat projections, and if you pick up to 6 players, you can win up to 25 times your money. That's taking $10 and turning it into $250. So I'm not in love with Thursday Night Football's matchup, but I do like some of the other matchups over the weekend. So I'm actually taking the more on Bryce Young. I feel like with a head coaching change, there's always a bit of a bump from the players in the locker room the following weeks. Matthew Stafford, he's playing some of his best football of the year. I'll take the more on his passing yards, pretty low in my opinion. And then I got Drake London, the more on his receiving yards. And then Javonte Williams, the more on his rushing yards for the Broncos. So go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Now, the link for that is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Second key to victory for Atlanta, I just want a Kyle Pitts game. Well, can the Falcons win without Kyle Pitts going off? Yes, we've seen that happen 6 times this year, more or less. But I am going to continue to try and speak this one into existence. And I feel like against this Bucs defense, this could be a great weekend for Kyle Pitts to go off. This year, he's got 492 yards, 1 touchdown, 41 grabs. I thought he had a sneaky good game in what was an absolute awful game against the Jets. He had 8 targets. That was the second most of the season, over 50 yards. And he's going up against some Buccaneers linebackers that are not having a phenomenal season. When we look at Tampa Bay's linebackers so far in coverage this season, Lavonte David, old as time, he's allowing completion percentage when targeted 80.7%. Yards allowed 363. His PFF coverage grade 61.4. Now, their rookie Dennis out of Pitt, he's giving up so far filling in for Devin White and Lavonte David a little bit, completion percentage of 83.3, yards allowed 49, but he has played a lot less than David and Devin White. His PFF coverage grade is better, though, at 72.5. Now, Devin White is battling through an injury right now, so I'm not sure if he's going to be available for Tampa Bay on Sunday against Atlanta. Selfishly, I hope he does play because he has been one of the worst linebackers in football this year, and the numbers speak for themselves. So even if he is healthy, he might be benched for the rookie Dennis. Third key to victory, you might have just noticed a trend. Attack Tampa Bay's linebackers. It doesn't have to just be Kyle Pitts, though, that gets after the linebackers in the middle of the field, right? You can get Cordarrelle Patterson going in that direction. Bijan Robinson, put him in the slot, have a mismatch against Lavonte David or Devin White, and abuse those matchups. Attack the middle of the field. This is Tampa's weakness. They've got great safeties in Antoine Winfield. They've got a really good defensive line in Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey. What they don't have, though, are good linebackers. Abuse that matchup. Get Bijan Robinson, the rock in open space, right? Get players in motion. Disguise things. See what coverage Tampa Bay is lining up in. Don't be predictable. Don't be stale and boring. Get some pre-snap motion going. Get linebackers on the run before the snap, and then use that to your advantage because you dominate those matchups. Fourth key to victory for Arthur Smith, win at the line of scrimmage. If I'm Tampa Bay right now, I'm thinking, all right, what do we have to do to get Atlanta to come down to our level? Well, that would probably be beating up the Falcons' arguably biggest strength on offense, which is their offensive line. I know that some people don't agree with that, but I'm telling you guys, the Falcons' offensive line is sneaky good. Rushing yards this year. In Atlanta's wins, they are averaging 151.8 yards on the ground. In their in their wins, rushing yards allowed, though, defensively, 97.5. So over a 50-yard difference in Atlanta's wins between yards on offense and yards allowed on defense on the ground. Now compare that to Atlanta's losses this year. They were averaging 118.5 yards on the ground. So still pretty good numbers, to be honest with you. It's not like this team ride or die with the ground game. They are still going to move the ball well, win or lose. But the rushing yards allowed defensively in losses goes up to 118. So instead of having a huge gap, which we saw in the wins, when Atlanta loses, it's because they don't do a great job of stopping the run, and they're not as explosive on the ground offensively. So that brings me to my fifth key to victory. Double team Vita Vea. If there is a man that can take down Bijan Robinson in this Falcons ground game, it is the former first-round pick. He has been the heart and soul of this Tampa Bay defensive line pretty much since he got drafted there, and he leads the team in sacks this year with 5.5. This is a big fella. They don't move so quickly at that size, but Vita Vea does. And for him to lead the Buccaneers in sacks, it's a little bit like Grady Jarrett leading Atlanta in sacks last year. Half glass full, half glass empty. You got a great player in him, right? But you probably don't need your interior defensive lineman leading you in sacks. So if you can double team Vita Vea, this is going to fall under Chris Lindstrom's domain. Have a running back or a tight end. Tight end's a little tough to chip an interior defensive lineman, but have your running backs in Algier and Bijan Robinson ready to step up and take on a big blow from Vita Vea if he's able to get through the offensive line. Now, before I give you my score prediction for this game, I want to hear your score prediction down in the comment section. Falcons versus Bucs. Let me know who you got and by how much. I think Atlanta's going to win this game and improve to 7-6. Give me the Dirty Birds 27-17.